Hello and welcome to another special daily Muppet video. And this one, as I referenced in the earlier live, I think from yesterday, by the time this one is published, I would be coming forward with a video on United's midfielder approach this summer, going through some of the names, talking about what United are looking for, and I'm rating some of the options that are out there. Now, I've included in this, same as I had with the striker video and some of the other videos, the people that I feel there are some genuine links to at this point in time that United have watched and that there's good links in media. Could United get somebody that is not on this list? 100%. One name that we mentioned that could be is Javier Guerrero at wherever he is, but in Spain, there's some talk there from meeting with his representative. It might have something to do with him, it might not. We don't actually know, so I didn't include him, but that is okay. And yes, it is a PowerPoint. So let's get into it because there is a lot to cover and unpack in this one, and a lot to say. So first of all, will be kind of a little bit of a midfield debate, the one where James gets irritated by every single tactical online. Now, if you've been watching my videos and lives for some time and my watch alongs and things like that, you will know that I have a really strong, different opinion to most of the stuff that's out there regarding what United need from a midfielder. I've had this since summer. I had the same arguments when there was discussions over like Fofana versus Ugarte last summer, things like that. But I'm going to try to present to you the reason why, because I don't necessarily base my opinions off of purely nothing, and especially in the case here where we have a manager in Ruben Amorim that is very particular in some of the things he likes to do. That's what I want to discuss. So let's get right into it. Let me make my camera just a little bit smaller for this, for this part of it, and then I'll make myself bigger in a minute here. So what kind of midfielder do United want? Well, this really depends. There's two midfielders, obviously, in Amorim's 3-4-2-1 type of system, 3-4-3, what have you. Midfielder number one is what we might call the six. The traits that all of his sixes have shared, and I've gotten the stats on the right. Joao Palhinha. Now, we don't have stats enough from this season at Bayern to show it, but we've got him. We've got Ugarte this season. We've got Yeoman last season. The radar doesn't go back enough to look at like Ugarte from way back then or Palhinha from way back then, but the traits they all share are high dual winning percentage. They're all in the absolute top of the dual winning percentage. That's actually this column right here, 90, 89, 90. And this is percentile, not percentage. This is percentile. So they're in the top dual winners in football. This is their defensive volume. Palhinha and Ugarte had a much higher volume than Yeoman, which is fine. Maybe the team is a bit better with Yeoman or with Yeoman in there where he didn't need to do as much. But yeah, regardless, still above average. Then you go to the carrying section. Neither Joao Palhinha or Yeoman carry the ball at all, like literally ever, to the point of like a genuine zero, where Ugarte actually does carry the ball a little bit, and I'll show some things on the stats on this later. But again, the six is not expected really to progress. And then you go to passing, and you see that this season, to be clear, Yeoman was actually a bit above average, while Palhinha was very average on progressive passes. For Fulham, if you look at Palhinha otherwise, it's usually pretty low. Ugarte's near the bottom here in the 19th percentile. And then this is forward pass percentage. Ugarte's far and away the safest, most secure, consistent passer of the three, while Yeoman is a bit more of a risk taker. You can see that with forward passes and progression. So Yeoman passes it a bit forward more, but has a very low percentage completion. Actually, one of the worst, near the bottom, I should say, in terms of percentile on completing those passes, which is one of the things that Amorim goes back and forth on from time to time. And then you have key passes. This one is forward pass percentage. How much do they pass forward? None of them got a lot of key passes. They're not really passing to the final third that much. And this is what percentile they're in for forward passes per 90, with with Ugarte the lowest this season, Paulinho pretty low, Yilmaz actually quite high. So they're a bit different in this respect. But the things that they share are high duel winning percentage, high defensive actions, high physicality. For the most part, most of the time, Amorim has used midfielders who he wants a high pass accuracy, and progression is a bonus, not a necessity. And I will show you the examples of why. These players are definitely more pure destroyers, this midfielder. Now, you got people who will say, okay, but I want a progressor. Okay, that's too damn bad. You're not going to get one because it's not really what he wants. And I want to use the example of his center backs to show you he does not like progression through the middle. These are his center backs from this season. Gonçalo Inácio, who generally played on the left. Usman Diomande, who usually played in the middle. And Zeno de Bast, who usually plays on the right. Look at the progressive passes. This is your right and left center back, okay? This is your central center back right here. They go from 97 and 98 percentile to 18 percentile. He does not progress it through the middle center back and the middle the middle deepest defender. They even sometimes make a 2 while the other midfielder moves up. Their job is usually passing the ball sideways. Sideways passing with high accuracy, recycling the ball, sometimes switching the play from side to side. That is a necessity. That is something he wants, but they go sideways, sideways, sideways. Again, I'll say it again, sideways. The middle goes to the side and the progression comes down the wide areas. It comes from the wide center backs and it comes from the wide players, not through the middle. The progression comes from the wide players, not through the middle, okay? That is Amorim. You can like it, dislike it. That's the facts. That is what he wants. That is the way that he plays. Same with the center backs, the same in the midfield. So, what about the other midfielder, though? Because here's where you can get a little bit of a different player. Midfielder number 2, I always call the attacking 8. And a lot of people think of it as like a deep pivot player, but I don't. As United get very good under Amorim, as they were good under him at Sporting, that player becomes much more of an attacker. And that's where we can have discussions here over Kobbie Mainoo in a minute. Ideally, they are a good dueler, that they win a decent number of their duels. This is Morita in pink here, who he used for years here. He liked him a lot. Gave him a ton of praise. He was a good duel winner, a good volume of defensive actions for pressing and making it difficult to play through the middle. Forward passing and progressive passing is good. He did do that. He was a forward passer. He was a progressor above average, but also kept it secure in a good percentile on these forward passing, that it was not that risky, even though passing the ball forward. A good carrier of the ball as well is important in these positions. A good carrier in the final third. And this is what I would consider to be an all-action attacking 8, somebody who's going to play good, hard defense, press well, win duels, carry the ball forward, pass the ball around, but do things all really like in a very well-rounded way and chip in with the goals when the time comes, even though you can't see that on here. Now, when you look at Bruno and Mainoo has better defensive traits, but currently lacks some of the progression. But he is a really good carrier of the ball. Mainoo is good in the final third, but he's not really a 10. His attributes are, again, usually coming from a bit deeper, carrying into the final third. He's not a super creative passer at all. So this is my argument on him, that I believe he actually suits this 8 role really, really well if he can continue to grow into it more and more. And it is a role that will take advantage of his good traits in attack as we get better and better and dominate possession more and more. This is a good thing for Amorim's attacking 10. This is actually meant 8 here, but they become almost like an extra 10, a late arriver, all of that. Bruno brings a lot of the progression, especially since the current, center back when wing back progressors are injured and lacking in Lissandro and Heaven. And since we've just gotten wing backs in, Bruno's gotten deep to try to solve that problem where he's progressing the ball a lot from deep because we don't have it in these other areas. That was not obviously Amorim's intention originally. He said himself he moved Bruno deep to try and solve those because they don't have the personnel he wants there. Bruno's best traits are attacking, so ideally you get Bruno nearer to the goal. Now, it's been working, but it may not be ideal in the long term. Bruno also still doesn't do enough defensive work. So even though he's been incredible, midfield is still too easy to play through. So you look at this again, you look at Bruno in the purple down here. Amazing stuff. This is not a critique of Bruno. He's been amazing. Still think long term, closer to goal. He does not do enough defensive work. And you can watch it in games. He works hard, but his positional sense and things are not totally there for a midfielder. The middle is not supposed to be that easy to play through for an Amorim team, and it is right now. And it was definitely more secure in different setups and things like that. And so I think in the long term, it's still maybe not it for Bruno. If we look at Matheus Nunes, who was the last partner for Ugarte at Sporting when he was there, he's a good example of the partner to the shore. Good on the ball, good carrier, good progressor, good at creating in the final thirds, also has a good defensive volume. And I think, quite honestly, that Kobbie Mainoo fits this role really well. They don't have to be a super creative passer. They don't have to, but they need to be really good on ball. Kobbie Mainoo is so good at getting the ball, turning out of pressure, carrying up the pitch, progressing play, while also being an all-action defender and also having those good traits of arriving late to the final thirds, arriving as an extra attacker. He did that really well when he first came in. I still think this is his best position, but as United get really good, it's going to look better and better, where it's less a defensive role and more an attacking role, and that's how it should be. So I still think Mainoo fits it a bit more, but this is a question we don't know. So what do we want? Maybe we want both. Maybe we want a 6 and this attacking 8. Maybe we do need both because we don't know if Bruno's going to move back up. Then we still need an 8 to rotate with Mainoo or start over Mainoo or be behind Mainoo. We still need a 6 because if Casemiro goes. So there's a lot of questions we don't have the answer to that are still being lined up. Is Bruno the 8 or the 10? Is Mainoo the 8 or the 10? Bruno's 31 next year. Even if Bruno's right now, our best D player and he's going to stay there, for how many years? When does all of this catch up to him? Playing every minute, all of that. We can sit and dig our heads in the sand and say it never will. And he's incredible. Like, his body should be studied, how durable he is. It can't last forever. I'm sorry, it cannot. And I do worry about that every single day in the game. What happens then? What happens? What happens if something did happen to Bruno? And if finally something flipped? Look at Kevin De Bruyne, who was also extremely durable, one of the most consistent in work rate and energy and legs and all of that for years. And then at some point, his body just has stopped working as it used to. When does that happen? Can it happen? Casemiro's 33. Does he leave yet? That's a question. So we probably need a long-term 8. Plus probably rotation or an additional 6 depending on Casemiro. So a disclaimer here is a lot of these names we've been looking at for a while, but many are also pre-Vivell, and there are probably some new ones and younger ones, but potentially we'd want 2 young players to come into the team. So let's start with the first ones over here. We'll start with the 8s in the beginning. And I'll start with Ederson from Atalanta as an attacking 8. He's 25 years old. You can look at his overall kind of chart here. Well-rounded, kind of what you want. A forward passer, a progressive passer, has good key passes. Little low on the defensive actions, but not terrible. Good at carrying the ball. He's above average at basically everything. You look at his positioning, obviously slightly more in front of the halfway. He's kind of a good all-rounder, good progression, good on the ball, creating chances, scoring goals, pretty well-rounded player, and one United have been looking at. So, he fits as like this all-action midfielder. He's got good size and physicality. But he is potentially costly. Some of the prices we've seen have been 50 to 60 million for him. I don't think United are prepared to pay that kind of money. And that probably is a little bit overpriced for him. I don't know that he's Ederson is good at a lot of things, but he's not great necessarily at anything. That's okay for this midfielder, but maybe not for that kind of money. If you could get him for 30, 40 million, I think he's a brilliant player to add to the team, but the price would need to be right for United to get this done. I don't think they're willing to pay 50 to 60 million for him. The second midfielder that I want to look at is Joao Gomes. United have been watching him for some time. He's an 8 probably. I might have called him a 6 previously, but now I would say he's a bit of an 8. Higher defensive actions, a bit lower on progressive passing, but good carrier of the ball, good offensively. So Joao Gomez is an interesting one. Looking up here, this is the prior year and this is this season. He's gone from a bit of a kind of just a destroyer who is good on the ball to a much more well-rounded player who's probably playing as a slightly more advanced eight, pressing high and all of that than before. Um, just an interesting one that United have been looking at before. We can see, good traits on the ball, good carrying, successful take-ons. He's good on the ball and he's good in the tackle. And that is a lot of what is wanted. And while his passing has improved too, a lot of what is wanted for that advanced eight. He's a hard worker, a hard runner. Rounded out his game more. He's good on the ball. He's a good presser, good tackler. And so I think, like Ederson, he'd be a solid addition at the right price. The biggest issue would be what would be the types of costs that they would be looking to get for him, because it would potentially be well outside what we'd be wanting to spend. Then the third one is Douglas Luiz. This is an interesting one. United have been linked to him on a few occasions. Definitely more of an attacking eight, not doing a ton on the defensive actions. He's not really made his way much into the team at Juventus, so I don't know the reason for that. Potentially he's had an injury, some other things, but maybe that means it's a time when you could get him on a discount, at a low fee, and he'd be available. He's got very good attacking stats. He's probably the most attacking of the ones mentioned so far, carrying the ball forward, getting involved. When you look at like Aston Villa numbers wise, 9 goals, 5 assists, 6 goals, 6 assists. This is a midfielder who's definitely was contributing to the goals. At Juventus, not really playing. Don't know why. Good fit for an attacking eight, good goals and assist contribution at Aston Villa, but he's not really playing at Juventus. And maybe that means you could get him on the cheap. I don't know. He was available in January. On a cut price deal, I would consider it, but there's red flags. He's going to be, 27 as well. So he's not really fitting the young profile, but if you could get him for 15, 20 million, feels like it's an option that could chip in with some contributions, but maybe there's other issues with him. I haven't really followed, but he's one United have been linked to and interested in, but definitely not a 6. An attacking 8 in this system, he has potential. He's done set pieces and things like that too. Then there's midfielder number 4, Adam Wharton. Which position is he, 6 or 8? I don't know. Doesn't really matter yet. He's been injured for a good chunk of the season, and was kind of struggling at first with that. Had a surgery. He's come back. Palace are in very good form, and he's doing amazing. And he's a really, really, really top prospect that United were really interested in before. Insane duo winning for a midfielder of his attributes and size and age in the Premier League. Up there like, in the Ugarte and such categories for winning duels, but also while also being a hugely progressive passer, key passes, forward passes, good on the ball. Like, he's doing everything. Now, does he have the security for a 6? I'm not really sure yet. Is he a player who will sit and spray the ball around how you'd want him? Does that really fit what United want? I don't know. But you could always, the kind of talent that he has, you could always, push him into the kind of the attacking role where he's been playing a bit more of now in the attacking areas, and look at the creativity, creating around the box, progressive on the pass. He's not carrying the ball much forward, but doing a high volume of defending. And so I think at the moment, he's probably rounding himself out as a player who is maybe best right now. I would say you don't leave him as your deep shield for the back line, but you kind of let him free in a freer kind of role, roaming around, winning tackles, moving the ball, getting it into the attacking areas and contributing to all of that are probably what I would do best. He's the type of talent though where in the end he might be able to do everything. You look at him, his improvements in all of these areas on a per game basis, and his talent at 21, he's left-footed. That's how I would see it right now. He was really highly rated by United. He's got an amazing skill set overall, great size and physicality at 2, and he was out with an injury, but he looks really good since returning. And he's the type of one where, like, if you would get him, you just put him in the team and you figure it out. And he could start as a I would say right now you'd want to have a defensive kind of more shield next to him because you're just going to get the most out of him that way. But long term, he could be your base player. He could be so good that the type of player that a manager changes a little bit for and says, okay, maybe we could get more out of this. But at the moment, he's doing his best work, I think, further forward, and that's fine. But it gives you a lot of, I think, stability if you were to put him next to, a high volume defender who can just recycle the ball, because he's the one who can contribute to progressions as needed in that case, and in more forward positions and around the box, creating chances and all of that. But a really talented player that we should keep watching. He might be very expensive, but you'd be hard pressed to find, in terms of how he was looked at before this, a better prospect. Both City and United were looking at him as like the next big thing in the midfield. And if there's some way United could compete for him, maybe he's on the expensive end, where if we can get into Champions League, we can buy more expensive young options. I think he'd be in there for sure. Looking at a more cheap option, but also an amazing prospect in Hayden Hackney. I've spoken about him before. He is definitely one I would put as a number 8 in this system. Just extremely well-rounded when you look at everything. He contributes to the goals. He's a good shooter. He's a good shot creator. He's an incredible progressor of the ball. Great on the ball. Does some good defensive work as well in tackles and things like that. You can look at his shot creation. He's doing a lot. The tackling stats are decent. And down here, if we look even on the percentiles, he's winning a lot. So he's a very combative, physical, and the championship is a physical league to play in. He's combative, he's creative, he helps. This is almost, to me, an ideal attacking number 8, where he can contribute a lot to the attack, but is very, very combative out of possession too. Covers a lot of ground, works really hard. You can look, good high volume of take-ons. The success rate is a bit lower, but usually when you see people who are doing a lot of them, that's pretty normal. Big carrier of the ball, progressing it up the pitch. That is one thing we just don't have in the team. Players who can get the ball, carry it up the pitch, and progress it on the ground. He does it with the pass, but he also does it with the carry, and I think that's very, very important too, and into the final third. I look at him like, I'm not saying a better Manu. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to compare their talents, but I look at him like this is what maybe like Manu in a rounded out sense might look like, even if Manu may have some better, talent in certain areas. Hackney is quite impressive here. And he's the type of player where he's doing so well at this level, you kind of think he needs a step up to see, can he do it in tougher leagues and all of that? But for a young player on a good price, it'd be interesting. You can see passes in the final third, penalty area. He can give you a lot, I think, of what Bruno is giving you from the deeper areas, basically, with a bit more a bit more combativeness off the ball. I'm not saying he's as good as Bruno, but he can give you a lot of what Bruno's giving you while also being more combative on the ball and give you Bruno into, a more attacking role. But definitely one of the most impressive young players in football on the ball. Suits this attacking 8, progress and carry and creativity in the final third. He does it all. Gets goals now too. He's been adding. He's a good defender. For me, this is like the ideal choice for a young attacking 8 at a good price. This type of player is what I'd like to see United bring in. 20 million, 25 million, something like that for him. I think this is the type of player you could see what they could do. You really, really could. And it suits Amorim as well. Another option that's been mentioned a lot is Jobe Bellingham. Now, you can see like on the front end, a lot of this looks fairly impressive. He's fairly contributing to the attack. Good on the take-ons and the carries and things like that. Good in the air. He's a tall player. But when I dig into it further, I got to tell you, I have a little bit of concern on this, which is that he's a good dribbler and he's good in the attack in creating goals. Beyond that, he doesn't really do very much. I'm going to be quite honest. I'm not really sure what he is yet. The improvement, he's improving and he's growing, but mostly as he gets closer to the goal. He's young, though. So, he's definitely a project signing right now. His passing and carrying stats outside of the attacking area isn't very good. He's not doing much outside of the attacking area. I'm just not sure, but he's very young. He's a good shooter, final third creator, and I don't mean this to be insulting, but I do think of him a bit like a McTominay right now. That's a bit of his skill set, is McTominay, which I've made jokes many times myself about Jude Bellingham being a rich man's McTominay. They're not that far off, quite honestly, but maybe Jobe right now is a poor man's McTominay, but he's younger. He's got time, but he's not Jude. Like, people got to get that through their head. He's not Jude at 16, how he was, but he's coming on and he is improving. Right now, I would feel like he'd be better as almost as a 10 than he would, as a midfielder, in his contributions, that he'd need to round out his game to become a midfielder. That's how I would see. But the talent is potentially there. But he's so young, and so I'm not calling him that. I'm just saying that's his ceiling. In terms of where he is now, I would say comparable to like what we were getting from McTominay, which you could use in games, but not enough at the moment. Like, I don't think Jobe comes in and could be a starter in the team at all. I think he'd be a good tool to use in certain games, things like that, and you'd have to really develop him as a project, and that's fine. That's okay. Let's move on to the sixes and Ugarte. I want to talk about my one of the players I like the most that is oft criticized, Manuel Ugarte, and make some comparisons to him at this point in time. When you look at his numbers overall, I think some of it is overly critiqued. You look, he's in one of the highest percentages for pass completions. He's actually very good on the dribble too. If you look at this bottom one, he's one of the most successful dribblers in the league. The amount he loses the ball when he's taking a man on the ball is extremely low. He's a very, very secure dribbler. It's not very progressive, but there's been, there's certain things that are fair criticisms and aren't. You look at progressive passes and carries and he's quite low. But that doesn't mean people will say, well, that means he's not press resistant. He can't receive the ball from deep. Wrong. He totally can, and he does. He is one of the most successful dribblers under pressure in the league. He just doesn't progress with it. He usually gets it, wins it, gets out of pressure, and recycles it. Again, you look at the beginning, sending it sideways or backwards, and as well with one of the highest percentage completions. So then you add to that his tackling, interceptions, block volume. He's an incredibly high percentage dual winning and volume defender. He's an extremely high take on carrying success rate, even if it's a low volume of progression. He's actually the best dribbler in the team. By the way, when you look at these numbers, he's the best dribbler in the team in terms of success. You can go through it. You'll see he is the best dribbler in the team in terms of his when you balance all of this together in terms of playing out of pressure. So I think some of the narratives just go crazy. High pass completion rate. What he gives you is safety, physicality, security, and volume, but not progression. That's what he gives you, okay? Progression is a bonus. Should he do more? Yes, I'd like to see him do more, but not an enormous amount. If he was back up to, the progressions that he was doing before, closer to the about 30 percentile, I think everybody would be happier. But this is also who he is. This is what he was signed for. He wasn't a totally different player at PSG and or at Sporting. And again, when we look at what Amorim wants, it's close to what he wants. And that's the comparison we're going to make. Someone that security on the ball is really important for a six. And when we go through some of the options that we've been linked to, you'll see it actually kind of makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about Anton Stach, who we've been linked to recently. Now, I only have the stats from 23-24 because for some reason he's showing up as a center back, even though he's not on that. But we can see this. You can see in Germany, mind you, really high dual winning percentage in defensive actions, good on the carry, good progressive passing, not totally secure with the ball though, low percentage of forward passing. And those would be, when I look at his numbers, a volume defender, decent. He's average, I would say, on his progressions, chips in with some goals here and there. This is this season now that we're getting to look at. Positionally, obviously defensive, 6'4", he's big, that's good. He's good with both feet, that's good. He's a solid defender, that's good. But he is a bit loose with the pass, and I think that in the spaces that are provided in Germany, it's a little bit concerning to be loose with the pass, but it's also being a little bit more adventurous with the passing. So I don't know. I probably need to watch him to see, but he actually is pretty low on the percentages there. He's already 26. So my concern would be, does that translate to the Premier League where the spaces are tighter? Are you going to start having a player turning the ball over like crazy? That would be my concern. I think he's probably a good rotation to Ugarte, but I doubt he would be an improvement on Ugarte. He probably provides something a little bit different. But I don't know that you're going to get more necessarily out of him. There's risks with it for sure. But on a good price deal, probably very good rotation and a solid defender that could come into that 6. Then there's Felix Nmecha. Again, we look at him. High duel winning percentage, high defensive actions, lower on the carrying, decent and progressive passing, a bit better in the security of his forward passing than Anton Stach. We look again, solid defensive stats, good on successful take-ons, even though he's not super progressive, decent in the pass, a bit well-rounded. He's big as well, 6'3", technically sound. He was at the City Academy under Wilcox for a long time. A good defender, a high win rate on the ball. He's basic in his progressions, but safe. 24 years old. He's had some injuries, but they just have to keep an eye on that. That's not unusual for a young player, but he has had some injuries. He's similar to Ugarte, I think, in a lot of respects. He's a bit taller. He's really only his 3rd season. More progress certainly to be gained. It's an interesting one to look at. This is one I want to watch some more of, dig into a bit more, because I think he'd be a player where similar to Ugarte, but could be better in the long term. We'll see. But could be a very good option. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Then there's Ugochukwu. This is one I really, really like as well. Again, high dual winning percentage, high defensive actions. He's on loan from Chelsea to Southampton right now. High percentage passing. So you see that's in it, but he's also a good carrier of the ball as well. Low on progressive. So you can see a lot of the links we have to are pretty similar in their traits, and that makes a lot of sense to me. You can see not a lot in the offensive stats, but look at the carrying. He's really good on the ball and a really high volume defender. He's 6'2". He's big, high volume defender, secure on the ball, good on the dribble. He's basic in progression via the pass and decently safe with it. Only 20. So the ceiling for him, I think, is very, very high. I think he's a very good fit and a player that could definitely be better than Ugarte and be good in rotation, but somebody who could say, hey, that's your Ugarte upgrade that can maybe offer you a bit more in the long run. I really like him. I really, really like him. And again, I'm not saying I think even Ugarte needs to be replaced, but I do think that we need another 6 with Casemiro leaving. That is a good enough rotation, but I'd like it to be a young player that could be better. You always want to look and say, could we get somebody even better? And that gives you great options in there. You could even play them together if you get a player who's progressive enough. So this is my conclusion. This is what I would like United to do, which would be to bring in Hayden Hackney or Adam Wharton. If you brought in Adam Wharton, you may not need to sign 2. You may just bring him in because he could be your 6 later. He could be your 8 now. I'm not really sure, but he's quite impressive. So if you can spend a lot, get him or get Hackney and Ugochukwu. Those would be 2 players I think would give you exactly what you need in these positions that are very impressive. Good young players with huge growth potential that could potentially be available on a good price right now. I think they'd be transformative in the long term for United and really finally give us midfield options that round out the team and mean we're never short again in these positions. In the long term, if you had Mainu and Hackney for the 8, Ugochukwu and Ugarte for the 6, I think you're flying in that case. I think you've got really, really good choices, players who are all on the upswing, who have great different skill sets and things like that to add to the table. So that would be my conclusion. I hope United, do get some of these ones that we're linked to because there's really good options and some of them are certainly available at good prices too. Not super crazy expensive. But yeah, I would. These are ones I'd look at, and in a similar way, where based on budget, sales, based on Casemiro, all of that, what we can spend will really determine things. And I think we've got these cheaper options, and you have these young options that still fit where we want a young, high potential player that would be more expensive, like an Adam Wharton. So let's see what comes of that. But yeah, hopefully you found this information interesting. These are the names I'm looking at for now that I think have some merit. There might be more. We don't know. This point with Vivell, and if there's more names coming through that we don't know about that could just come out of nowhere, absolutely. But these are all interesting names for now, and definitely I think, fit what United are looking for in these two positions, and that they've been realistically linked to from my own info and info out there. So we'll have to keep a close eye. Let me know in your comments below, who do you like? Who do you not like? Who do you think is a good fit? Who is who's there? Who's good? What do you think of all this? What do you think United should do? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next video.